Hello, good morning, dear students. So, today we are starting with the sixth chapter of our supplementary textbook, that is Weathering in the Storm in Arsama. And this is a beautiful story of a little boy named Prashant that who has gone to meet his friend after 7 years. And while returning back to his village, what are the problems that he faced because of the storm? The description of that is given over here in this story. So, the Prashant is a little boy and he has already lost his mother. And after the 7 years, he has gone to meet his friend over there. So, the description is given over here that how he met his friends, and as the storm was going on, he has to sit on the roof or roots of the house for the 2 nights, and then at the end of the third day he was, when the situation was little bit, I should say almost 2-3% under control, then he was thinking that he should go back to his village to find out whether his family is there or he had already lost his family in the storm. So let us just start with the chapter. The cyclone that hit Orissa in October 1999 has killed thousands of people and devastated hundreds of villages. For 2 dreadful nights, Prashant, the young man, was marooned on the roof of the house. On the third day, he decided to go to his village. Did he find his family? So, the story is about a city or a place named Arsama, which is located in the Orissa, and it is about a storm which has occurred over there in the 1999, which had already killed thousands of people, thousands of villages. And for the 2 dreadful nights, the little boy has to sit on the roof of the house. And on the third day, he decided to go back to his village, but it is a big question mark that whether that child was able to find out that his family is alive or not. On 27th October 1999, 7 years after his mother's death, Prashant had gone to the block headquarters of Arsama, a small town in the coastal Orissa, some 18 kilometers from his village, to spend a day with a friend. So, Prashant, on 27th of October 1999, after the 7 years of his mother's death, Prashant has gone back to Arsama, the block headquarters of Arsama, which is a small town in a coastal part of Orissa and is almost 18 kilometers from the village where the Prashant was living, to spend a day with his friend. In the evening, a dark and menacing storm quickly gathered. Winds beat against the houses with a speed and a fury that Prashant had ever witnessed before. So अचानक से ही बहुत से काले बादल छा गए, और what happened that it was a sign that it is going to rain heavily, means the storm is going to come. Heavy and insistent rain filled the darkness. Ancient trees were uprooted and crashed to the earth. Screams rang the air as people and the houses were swiftly washed away. So the rain was, it was raining so heavily that it has already crashed out all the houses and roofs. Screams rang, means number of people who were having their house on rent, they were also shouting like anything, because all the houses, the storm has already washed out everything. The angry waters swirled into the friend's house neck deep. So प्रशांत वॉज लिविंग इन हिज फ्रेंड्स हाउस, और उसके जो फ्रेंड का घर था उसके घर पे भी उसके नेक तक का जो पानी था वो आ गया था. द बिल्डिंग वॉज ऑफ ब्रिक एंड मोटर एंड वॉज स्ट्रॉन्ग इनफ टू सर्वाइव द डिवास्टेशन ऑफ द विंड वेलोसिटी ऑफ 350 किलोमीटर पर आवर. उसका जो घर था, द हाउस वॉज ऑफ brick, means it was a type of a pakka house, but it was enough for them to survive over there for a shorter period of time. But the velocity of the wind was 350 kilometers per hour. But the cold terror of the family grew with the crashing of trees that had got uprooted and fallen on their house sometime in the middle of the night, damaging its roof and walls. So उसके आजू बाजू के जो बहुत सारे घर थे, बहुत सारे जो ट्रीज थे, वो सब की भी गिर गए. और ट्रीज तो कहीं पे भी गिर जाते हैं, मतलब दे आर नॉट, इट इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल दैट दे वुड फॉल स्टेबली. किसी भी डायरेक्शन में, अकॉर्डिंग टू द डायरेक्शन ऑफ द विंड, वो किसी भी डायरेक्शन में गिर सकता है. तो क्या हुआ, उसके घर पे ट्रीज भी ऊपर से गिर गए. The crazed destruction wrought by the cyclone and the surge of the ocean continued for next 36 hours, although wind speed had reduced somewhat by the next morning. नाइट का जो टाइम था, ड्यूरिंग थर्ड टाइम द कंडीशन ऑफ द विंड वॉज हाई, द स्पीड ऑफ द विंड वॉज वेरी मच हाई, बट by the next morning, it was little bit low. To escape the waters rising in the house, Prashant and his friends' family had taken refuge on the roof. Prashant will never forget the shock he has experienced at his first glimpse of the devastation brought by the super cyclone in the grey light in the early morning. So, तो वो लोगों ने क्या किया कि इस घर का जो सामान था वो कुछ ऊपर की तरह ऐसी कुछ जगह थी कि जहाँ पे वो लोग सेफ रह सके, वहाँ पे उसने शिफ्ट कर दिया था. A ragging, deadly brown sheet of water covered everything as far as the eye could see. Only fractured cement houses still stood in the few places. So सब कुछ मतलब सब कुछ जो स्टॉर्म था वो लेकर चला गया था. जो कच्चे हाउस थे वो तो पूरे के पूरे गिर ही गए थे, बट थोड़े बहुत जो सीमेंट वाले हाउस थे देवर ऑन द रोड एंड वो कहीं जगह पर सिर्फ दिख रहे थे. This was a blessing in disguise because the tender coconuts from the trees kept trapped family from starving for several days that followed. It was a type of a blessing for them क्योंकि क्या होता था कि जो कोकोनट का ट्री था वो नहीं गिरा था, तो वहाँ से जो कोकोनट्स गिरते थे उसको वो सर्वाइव करने के लिए वो जो कोकोनट्स थे वो बहुत ही हेल्पफुल थे. They froze in the cold and insistent rain. The rainwater washed away Prashant's tears. The only thought that flashed through his mind was whether his family had survived the fury of the super cyclone. Was he to be revived once again? So प्रशांत भी छोटा सा बच्चा था, उसको भी रोना आ गया, बट क्या हुआ, जो रेन वाटर था वो उसके आंसू भी लेकर चला जाता था, बट द ओनली थिंग दैट वाज गोइंग इन द माइंड्स ऑफ प्रशांत वाज दैट कि क्या उसकी फैमिली बच पाएगी या तो क्या उसकी फैमिली में से किसी को कुछ प्रॉब्लम हुई है या नहीं. 2 days later, which seemed to Prashant like 2 years, the rain ceased and the rainwater slowly began to recede. Prashant was determined to seek out his family without further delay, but the situation was still dangerous and his friend's family pleaded with Prashant to stay back a little while longer, but Prashant knew he had to go. So at the end of the 2 days, Prashant seemed like ही हैड ऑलरेडी पास्ड 2 years बिकॉज वो उसके फ्रेंड के घर पे था. घर पे भी सब लोग चिंता करते होंगे कि ये कैसा होगा, अच्छा होगा कि नहीं, इज़ एवरीथिंग ओके विथ हिम. और प्रशांत जो था वो उसके घर की चिंता करता था कि घर पे सब कैसे होंगे एंड ऑल दैट. बट एट द एंड ऑफ द सेकेंड डे, जब थोड़ा थोड़ा पानी जो था स्टॉर्म का और रेन वाटर जो थोड़ा थोड़ा खाली होने लगा, थोड़ा थोड़ा नीचे की साइड गिरने लगा, तो सबने सोचा कि ही शुड स्टे फॉर अ लिटिल वाइल सो दैट जो पानी है वो साफ हो जाए, तो इट वुड बी मोर ईजियर फॉर हिम टू डायरेक्टली गो बैक टू हिज विलेज. बट प्रशांत जो था उसने सोच लिया था दैट ही वुड गो टुडे ओनली. He equipped himself with a long sturdy stick and then started on his 18-kilometer expedition back to his village through the swollen flood waters. So finally he had taken the decision that he would move बैक टू हिज विलेज 18 किलोमीटर्स अवे, और उसने अपनी एक्सपीडिशन जो था वो शुरू कर दिया. इट वॉज अ जर्नी ही वुड नेवर फॉरगेट. ही कंस्टेंटली हैड टू यूज हिज स्टिक टू लोकेट द रोड टू डिटरमाइन वेदर द वाटर वॉज मोस्ट शैलो. सो इतना यू कैन सी इन द फिगर एज वेल, इतना सारा पानी था कि उसको पता नहीं चलता था कि कहाँ पे रोड है और कहाँ पे खड्डा है. सो फॉर दैट ही हैज़ टू यूज द stick. At places it was a waist deep and progress as slow. At several points he lost the road and had to swim. So कहीं कहीं जगह पे तो ऐसी सिचुएशन आ जाती थी that he has to swim. After some distance he was relieved to find 2 friends and his uncle who were also returning to their village. But after moving further he found that there were two of his friends and uncle. They were also belonging from the same village and they were going to their village. They decided to move ahead together. So all the 4 of them decided to move away together. As they waded through the waters, the scenes they witnessed grew more and more macabre. They had to push away many human bodies, men, women, children, and carcasses of dogs, goats, cattle. Water current swept against them as moved ahead. So जैसे जैसे वो लोग आगे चलते गए, what they found the dead bodies of men, women, children and everything. कहीं कहीं पे तो कोई एनिमल्स जो थे उसकी भी डेड बॉडीज दिखने को मिलती. दे हैड टू पुश एवरीथिंग टू मेक देयर वे. Prashant now wept out loud and long. He was sure that his family could not have survived in the catastrophe. So ये सब कुछ देखने के बाद उसने भी ही वॉज थोड़ा बहुत तो वो भी मेंटली स्ट्रांग हो गया था. इट इज़ नॉट एट ऑल पॉसिबल कि उसकी फैमिली जो है वो शायद सर्वाइव कर पाई होगी. इवेंचुअली प्रशांत रीच्ड हिज फैमिली विलेज Kalikuda. His heart went cold, and finally he reached his village, Kalikuda, and his heart went cold. Where his home once stood, there were only remnants of the roof. और जब उसने देखा कि जहाँ पर पहले उसका घर खड़ा था वहाँ पे तो अब भी सिर्फ बहुत सारे रूफ टॉप्स ही थे. सम ऑफ देयर बिलोंगिंग्स वर कॉट मैंगल्ड एंड ट्विस्टेड इन द ब्रांचेस ऑफ द ट्रीज जस्ट विजिबल अबव द डार्क वाटर्स. सो उसके घर के जो कोई भी बिलोंगिंग्स थे वो कोई दिख नहीं रहे थे. यंग प्रशांत डिसाइडेड टू गो टू द रेड क्रॉस शेल्टर टू लुक फॉर हिज फैमिली. और वहाँ पे एक रेड क्रॉस शेल्टर था जहाँ पे सब लोगों को केयर करने के लिए रखा जाता था. तो प्रशांत ने सोचा कि ही वुड गो ओवर दैट टू फाइंड वेदर हिज फैमिली इज देयर और नॉट. अमॉन्ग द फर्स्ट पीपल ही सॉ इन द क्राउड दैट वॉज हिज मैटरनल ग्रैंड मदर. सो यहाँ पे बहुत सारा क्राउड था और वो क्राउड में उसने सबसे पहले किसको देखा, उसकी नानी माँ. मैटरनल ग्रैंड मदर मीन्स नानी माँ. Weak with hunger, she rushed to him, her hands outstretched, her eyes brimming. It was a miracle. They had long given him for dead. So it was a miracle for everything कि प्रशांत को भी लगा था that उसकी फैमिली में से कोई शायद सर्वाइव नहीं कर पाया होगा. But now everyone was there. Quickly word spread and his extended family gathered around him and hugged him tight in relief. Prashant anxiously scanned the mortally battered group. His brother and sister, his uncles, aunts, all seemed to be there. So सब लोग अब वहाँ पे थे. By the next morning, as he took in the desperate situation in shelter, he decided to get a grip over himself. He sensed a deathly grief settling upon 2,500 strong crowd in the shelter. 86 lives were lost in the village. All the 96 houses had been washed away. So the survey is given over here that 2,500 people का crowd था. Out of that 86 people had already lost their lives and 96 houses of the village had been washed away in the storm. It was their fourth day at a shelter. So far they had survived on the green coconuts, but they were too few to go around much to tumble the people. So जो population थी वो shelter में ज़्यादा थी और अब तो they had already spent 4 days विदाउट ईटिंग एनीथिंग. बट किसके सहारे उन लोगों ने 4 दिन काटे थे, ऑन द बेस ऑफ कोकोनट ट्रीज. बट अब तो कोकोनट वाटर, बट अब तो उसके पास इतने ज़्यादा कोकोनट्स भी नहीं थे कि वो इतने सारे पीपल को सर्वाइव कर सके. प्रशांत, ऑल ऑफ 19 years, डिसाइडेड टू स्टेप एज लीडर ऑफ हिज विलेज इफ नो वन एल्स डिड. ही ऑर्गेनाइज्ड अ ग्रुप फॉर यूथ्स एंड एल्डर्स टू जॉइंटली precise the merchant once again to part with his rice. This time the delegation succeeded and returned triumphantly, wading through the receding waters with a flood for the entire shelter. No one cared that the rice was already rotting. Branches from the fallen trees were gathered to light a delicate slow fire on which to cook the rice. For the first time in 4 days, the survivors at the cyclone shelter were able to feel their bellies. This next task was to organize a team of youth volunteers to clean the shelter of filth. So सब लोगों को पता था कि किसी ने लास्ट 4 डेज से कुछ नहीं खाया है. सबकी बैलीज जो थी वट वॉज टोटली एम्प्टी. बट प्रशांत टुक द इनिशिएटिव. उसने क्या किया, सबको इकट्ठा किया और बोला कि हम लोग कुछ नहीं तो एटलीस्ट हम लोग राइस तो पका सकते हैं. वहाँ पे थोड़ी जगह थी, कुछ लकड़ी, रेन तो बंद हो गई थी. सो इट वॉज पॉसिबल फॉर दैम कि अगर उन लोगों को चाहिए तो वो लोग क्या कर सकते हैं, जैसे हम लोग चूल्हा करता है ना वैसे ही वो लोग लकड़ी इकट्ठा करके उसके ऊपर राइस तो बना ही सकते हैं. On the 5th day, a military helicopter flew over the shelter and dropped some food parcels. But on the next day, a military helicopter flew over them and they dropped some food parcels. It then did no return. The youth task force gathered empty utensils from the shelter. Then they deputed the children to lie in the stand left by the waters around द शेल्टर विथ दीज यूटेंसिल्स ऑन दियर स्टमक. सो वहाँ पे जो हेलीकॉप्टर्स में से कुछ भी खाने के लिए देता था तो सबको मिल जाता था. द मैसेज गॉट थ्रू एंड आफ्टर दैट अ हेलीकॉप्टर मेड रेगुलर राउंड्स फॉर द शेल्टर आई ड्रॉपिंग फूड एंड अदर बेसिक नीड्स. सो इट वॉज अ ह्यूज साइक्लोन. सो सब ने क्या किया, जो हेलीकॉप्टर से वो लोग सबको फूड प्रोवाइड करते थे, बेसिक नेसेसिटीज जो थी वो भी सबको प्रोवाइड करते थे। प्रशांत फाउंड दैट लार्ज नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रंस हैड बीन ऑर्फन्ड। सो प्रशांत ने एक चीज़ ऑब्जर्व की, दैट नंबर ऑफ चिल्ड्रंस हैड लॉस्ट देयर parents. He brought them together and put up a polythene sheet shelter for them. Women were mobilized to look after them. So उसने क्या किया कि जो बच्चे थे जिन लोगों ने अपने पेरेंट्स को गुम दिया था, जिस लोग सच टाइप ऑफ चिल्ड्रन जो हैड लॉस्ट देयर पेरेंट्स, उसके लिए प्रशांत ने सबको इकट्ठा किया, और जो वुमेन्स थी जिसने उसके फैमिलीज को घूम दिया था, सबको इकट्ठा करके बोला कि आप लोग ये बच्चों का ध्यान रखें. एंड वाइल द मैंस वर सिक्योर टू फॉर फूड एंड मटीरियल्स एंड शेल्टर. As the weeks passed, Prashant was quick to recognize that women and children were sinking deeper and deeper in their grief. He persuaded the woman to start working in the Food for Work program started by an NGO. So वहाँ पे एक NGO था जो लोगों ने भी सबको हेल्प करने का सोचा था. So he just persuaded the women to help the NGO. And for the children, he organized a sports event. He himself loved to play cricket, and so he organized cricket matches for the children. So situation was not under control. सब लोग रो रहे थे. It was not at all possible for them that they would do something that would help the children. So what they did, they just started camp. And as Prashant also used to love the cricket matches, so he just organized a play camp for cricket camp for children. The initial government plan was to set up institutions for orphans and widows. However, this step was successfully registered, as it was felt that in such institutions children would grow up without love and windows. So the government has also taken the initiative to set up an institutions for such type of orphans and the widows. And however, the step was successfully resisted by the government, and they felt that such institutions should be there which should help the children to grow up with love, and widows would suffer from stigma and loneliness. So विडोज़ को भी कोई प्रॉब्लम ना हो, ऐसी सिचुएशन एक इंस्टीट्यूशन उन लोगों ने ऑर्गेनाइज कर दिया. Prashant's group believed orphans should be resettled in their community itself, possibly in the new foster families made up the childless widows and children without adult care. So प्रशांत ने भी सोचा कि दे शुड बी रिसाइटेड, मीन्स एक ऐसा इंस्टीट्यूशन या ऐसी कम्युनिटी बनानी चाहिए जहाँ पे ये सारे बच्चे जो ऑर्फन है उस पर, और जो विडोज़ हो गए हैं बिकॉज ऑफ द स्टॉर्म, मतलब विधवा लेडीज़, उसका भी केयर करनी चाहिए. It is about 6 months after the devastation of the super cyclone. This time Prashant wounded spirit has healed simply because he had no time to bother about his plan. His handsome youthful face is what the widows and orphan children for his village seek out most in their darkest hour grief. So after the 6 months, everybody used to say that whatever the initiative that was taken by the Prashant was good. Thank you.